Okay, so this is part of our ongoing series of how to start and own and run your own TV network. As you are familiar, if you've watched the other 4 parts of this series, and it's probably an ongoing, never-ending series, the technology of video married to the internet has completely changed the television industry, and now for the very first time it's possible for you or anyone else to actually start and own your own television network for absolutely no cost. What motivated me to get on here is 2 articles that I read today, one in The Guardian and one in the New York Times. The first one in The Guardian was kind of a satirical piece about Taylor Swift starting her own television network. It was a funny piece, but in point of fact, Taylor Swift is launching her own online digital network, and although you're not Taylor Swift and you don't have the kind of following that she does, the point of this is that anybody can do this. If you wanted to set out and buy a cable channel, which we've actually looked at for some people that we work with, you're looking at the neighborhood of about $1 billion to make the purchase, and then you're stuck with a conventional, linear 1980s model of what television is. There are really no advantages to owning a cable channel today, and I think the value of it will continue to deteriorate. The interesting thing here is that what is going to replace cable, in my opinion, and I think I'm not the only one, is going to be online digital networks, which essentially are kind of what you're looking at now. This is an example of the ability to go live online with video for absolutely no cost. The fact is, if Taylor Swift can do it, and I understand she has a lot of money, anybody can do it. Now, you won't get the kind of following that she does, but you probably don't need it. The point here is that if you have a business where you have something to sell, or you even have something to say, and you have something you want to express to people, the opportunity now to launch your own television channel is there. Not many people take advantage of it, but that's because most people don't take advantage of technology anyway. When new technologies come along, when new technologies are invented, they don't come with an instruction manual. Nobody said, now suddenly it's capable of live streaming, broadcast quality for nothing. Therefore, the next logical step is to launch your own channel. It just happens to be there. The greatest analogy I can give you to this historically is the invention of the printing press in 1452, which suddenly made it possible for anybody to publish books. This was a radical transformation because prior to 1452 in the printing press, the only people who could make books were the church and the king, and the only book they basically made all the time was the Bible, which was not exactly a bestseller, even though everybody had one. In fact, very few people had them. Almost nobody had books. The invention of the printing press suddenly opened the door to anyone who wanted to publish. And of course, most people published absolute crap. This is this whole notion of fake news, which so upsets everybody all the time. This is not really something to be frightened of. This is something to take pleasure in a strange way, because now for the first time, we actually have a free press. We never had a free press before. The press was limited to people who could afford a press, and that was about a dozen billionaires and a couple of media companies. And so everything we saw or read or learned was a function of what those media companies wanted to tell us. Now, for the first time, we have a completely free press, and of course it's very scary because anybody can publish anything and share it with 3 billion people. But the point of this whole discourse that we're giving here is what you can do with this. Now, the Taylor Swift thing is interesting because it is a famous person doing it, but it's also, there's a person who could have afforded to buy a cable channel and opted not to. I mean, she's no idiot. So the opportunity is here. The second article that I found particularly interesting was in today's New York Times in the business section, and it was this thing about Snapchat, which you may have read, the front page of the business section, and it was how Snapchat has transformed social networks. The interesting part here was not so much about Snapchat, which, as you know, makes the stuff disappear immediately. The interesting part of the Snapchat thing is that the most popular and the fastest growing part of it is their video side. And the part of their video side that's growing the most quickly is something that's called Story. This is not individual photographs and stuff like that. I saw a thing on CBS this morning about Instagram, how Instagram is being used for news. And didn't really buy it because you can't communicate much news in terms of one still photograph. But you can communicate an awful lot of news and information in terms of video. And what Snapchat has done is they have actually stretched this thing out. And what they're finding really significantly works is storytelling as opposed to news. The paragraph that caught my attention that I really want to share you with is the part here that says, this company calls these live stories, and they've been transformative, unlike any other news presentation today. Every store offers one of the blah, blah, blah. For instance, the summer, blah, blah, blah. It says the difference here is that rather than showing the overhead shots or anchor stand-ups that are conventional TV news, which is old and boring in my opinion anyway, Snapchat offered video from inside people's houses, from shelters, from schools. They call it a macro story. What it really means is that the power to tell stories is being taken out of the hands of journalists, sorry for you who are journalists, TV news personalities, reporters, and the power to tell stories is now being put in everyone's hands. The Snapchat is a good snapshot of what works and what doesn't work, because they have 500 or 600 million users, and obviously what people are interested in is real stories from real people. The difference between sending a reporter and putting them on a plane and flying them to Aleppo, which we do all the time in the United States, is that we send somebody who doesn't speak Arabic, who doesn't know the story, who doesn't know the country, who flies in, who gives their impressions. This was one of the great failures, I think, of the whole coverage of the Arab Spring, because we sent a bunch of American journalists who didn't know what they were talking about, who didn't speak Arabic, who couldn't really talk to anybody, and who sort of observed what was happening and said, well, isn't this fantastic? It's the explosion of democracy. We have this problem all the time on a macro scale with stuff like Arab Spring, and on a micro scale with every little story that you do. When it was expensive to make television, when it was complicated to make television, when it was complicated to do print journalism, we used to have to fly somebody to Vietnam to report on what was going on. But in point of fact today, everybody who has a story to tell has an iPhone like this one. This has the capacity to shoot video, to edit, to upload, to share, and of course you can live stream. And now for the first time, very much as with Snapchat, you can get real stories from real people. To me, this is the future of journalism. Journalism no longer is in the hands, and neither should it be in the hands, of media companies whose primary interest, I would point out, is not really telling the truth, sorry to say. Their primary interest is maximizing their profits. They are a business, and so the stories they decide to do and the way they decide to do them is the stuff that will get them the highest ratings. This is fundamentally, I think, detrimental to communicating as close to the truth as you can get. And the truth is the stories of people that actually things are happening to, and that they have a passion for, and that they care about. This was physically and technologically impossible even 3 or 4 years ago, because only very, very few people own broadcast facilities or cable channels or networks, and therefore it was those corporations that made decisions based upon the maximum audience they could get of what they would decide to air. The same thing in terms of news. The decision about what news stories to do is not a function of some God-given, this is an important story and the world has to know about this. What the networks or cable decide to cover is a function of what they think will rate, and that's the reason that every time that Donald Trump gets on and tweets that burning the American flag should result in revoking your citizenship, which is something we'll get into in another discussion, all the channels run to that story because that's what gets them the most eyeballs and that's what gets them the highest ratings. And then the thing kind of resonates through the internet, and that becomes the thing that we're all trending. That's what it all fixates on. What we have an opportunity to do here with this technology, launch your own TV channel, is to take the power of what we feel is important out of the hands of major media corporations and put it in the hands of everyone. This is what we call the democratization of the medium. It's the essence of what a free press actually is. Brett says TV used to be an appliance and the content that came through it, now the definition is much more confusing. I agree. To use the word television, as my hopefully literary agents explained to me yesterday, is old and archaic, and we need a new term, and I'm not sure what that term is. She likes the word screen world, which is in my book, so maybe that's what we'll call it, in screen world now, because we all live on screens. The screens, what's in the screens, no longer has to be a function of what major media corporations and a few moguls and a few billionaires feel is important, but rather we can seize control of the content. This is a very radical idea. This is really revolutionary, but it's really important. So when it comes to what to do with this thing, what I urge you to do is to not be passive viewers. We have been passive viewers of content for 70 years. Even in newspapers, we have been passive readers of content for 70 years, but particularly in video and television. The average American spends 8.5 hours a day staring at these screens like this, and 5 hours a day watching television. And the question is, screen vision? Cheryl, I like screen vision, that's good. We need a term that replaces television. Screen vision, it's not bad, maybe we'll start using that. The fact is that the content that comes through this thing is what defines how we feel, for whom we vote, how we feel about the world, how we feel about the economy, how we feel about ourselves, because we spend so many hours staring at this thing. It's an incredibly powerful medium. And so the point of this discussion and the other discussions, and certainly I'll put in my own 2 cents here, I hope you'll all sign up for thevj.com, or at least go and look at it, because it's our online video school, but it's also our online locus of the reservation, of the revolution. And so join us, because what we're talking about here is not, how to make movies and how to make, what we're talking about here is seizing control. And this is, if the last election has shown us nothing else, it's shown us that conventional media doesn't do a very good job of telling us what we have to know. And so video casting is not a bad idea either. So maybe we should have a little contest to see what will replace television. But here's the bottom line, and then I'm going to get off, and Brett can assemble this thing, and we'll put it up on both Facebook and thevj.com as an accessible video, is that the bottom line here is that this is about taking control of the most powerful medium in the world. And it has been in the hands of multi-billion-dollar corporations since its inception. And you know what? They are not going to let go easily. But we have the power because we have the technology. All we have to do is use it. So that's the message for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, be sure to email. It's michael@rosenblumtv.com. Or when we put this up, we'll font there's Brett there, something else for you to do. Okay. P.F. Bentley, listening to you driving across Molokai. By the way, P.F. Bentley, the world's best photographer, a fantastic video journalist. Oh, Kevin Cooney. Yeah, we're pretty close to moving past screens with the proliferation. I agree. We are going to move past screens fairly quickly. Kevin we trained him for video. He was a comedian in Japan. He did some fantastic stuff. Anyway, I'm going to tune out now, if tune out is not an archaic term. And hopefully this gives you some thought. Thank you. Bye-bye.